What's going on, everybody? Kalipis Tech here, coming back at you with another video. In this video, we're going to be doing a quick comparison between the Samsung Galaxy A54 5G and the Samsung Galaxy A73 5G. Now, as always, if you end up wanting to learn more about either phone individually, be sure to check out the description, where I am linking to several other videos about them, as well as some information about pricing, availability, and some of my favorite smartphone accessories. But with that being said, let's get into it. So with the Samsung Galaxy A54 5G, we're getting a 6.4-inch 120Hz Super AMOLED display with a 1080p resolution, a PPI of 403, and a 19.5 by 9 aspect ratio. With the Samsung Galaxy A73 5G, we're getting a 6.7-inch 120Hz Super AMOLED Plus display. This phone also has a 1080p resolution, a PPI of 392, and a 20 by 9 aspect ratio. So in general, the displays are pretty similar. When it comes to display technology, you're not really going to see a significant difference between Super AMOLED and Super AMOLED Plus. They are really about the same, and they both do look really good. The colors are nice and vibrant, the displays are really bright, and the viewing angles are great too, so if you're like outside in the sun, for example, they will be pretty easy to see. And then of course, with 1080p resolutions, the displays are nice and sharp, and with 120Hz refresh rates compared to a typical 60Hz display. With these phones, the movement on the screen is going to be a bit faster and smoother, making them feel a bit more premium to use. But of course, the pretty obvious difference here is that with the Samsung Galaxy A73 5G, at 6.7 inches versus again 6.4 with the A54 5G, it is a little bit larger, so if you prefer a larger display, you will want to go with the A73 5G. But otherwise, if you don't really care about the size, or maybe you want something a bit more compact, the A54 5G will be perfectly fine. But even if you do prefer a more compact device, keep in mind despite the A73 5G being a bit larger, I feel like despite this, it does feel a little bit more sleek than the A54 5G. In general, the A54 feels a tiny bit thicker and heavier, so despite this not exactly giving the A73 5G an advantage per se, I feel like in general, when it comes to overall bulkiness, especially if you're planning on using a case, the difference is really not that big. Now for storage, both phones here are getting 128GB of internal storage with microSD card expansion too, so no difference here, but definitely plenty of storage. For the average user, you most likely won't need more than this, and even if you do, each phone does have another variant that has 256GB, so either way, for mid-range phones, the storage we're getting here is definitely good. For security features, both phones have Face Unlock, and they both have real nice in-display fingerprint scanners, so definitely nice to get both options here. But starting with the A54 5G, let's give them a try. There we go, one more time. And there we go. And now for the A73 5G. There we go, one more time. And there we go. So as you can see, real fast and responsive, no issues at all. And again, remember, both phones have Face Unlock too, so if you want to use that instead, you always can. Now taking a look at the camera setups here, with the Samsung Galaxy A54 5G. Up front, we got a real nice looking hole punch design for the selfie camera. This camera is 32 megapixels. Then on the back, we got a triple camera setup, with a 50 megapixel main camera, a 12 megapixel ultra wide camera, and a 5 megapixel macro camera. With the A73 5G, up front we got pretty much the exact same selfie camera. This camera is also 32 megapixels. Then on the back, we got a quad camera setup, with a 108 megapixel main camera, a 12 megapixel ultra wide camera, a 5 megapixel macro camera, and a 5 megapixel depth sensing camera. So in general, the camera setups are pretty much the same. Keep in mind with the A54 5G, despite not having a dedicated depth sensing camera, it doesn't really make a difference because with this phone, it's basically just built into the main camera. At this point in 2023, several manufacturers have been doing this a lot more, so definitely not really an unusual design or anything. But in general, when it comes to photo quality and features and everything, I feel like you're not really going to see a significant difference. On one hand, the A73 5G has a bit of an advantage, just given that it has a 108 megapixel main camera. I mean, this camera for a mid-range phone is seriously good. But on the other hand, with the A54 5G, considering it has a built-in depth sensing camera and in general the hardware is a bit better and newer and I want to say more updated too. Overall, things kind of even out. And honestly, when it comes to actual real-life practical use, the photo quality you get with either phone is really going to be around the same level. Definitely at the top when it comes to mid-range phones, but not quite as good as a flagship phone. To give you an idea of what these cameras can do, first, here's some pictures taken with the Samsung Galaxy A54 5G. So overall, definitely great photo quality here. Again, not quite as good as maybe an entry-level flagship phone, or an older flagship phone for that matter. So if you're coming from something like a Samsung Galaxy S10 for example that's a bit older but also quite a bit higher end, then in that case you might want to consider getting something like a Samsung Galaxy S21 FE for example, because while being good for what it is, the photo quality with the A54 5G is still not quite that good compared to pretty much any flagship device. The A54 5G is definitely not quite at that level, so if you do have that kind of expectation, you might be a little disappointed. But I do feel like for the average user, for things people are typically using their smartphone camera for, stuff like the occasional Instagram photo every now and then, sending photos to friends and family, and maybe taking vacation photos for your own memories, for that kind of use, it will definitely get the job done. And then here's some pictures taken with the A73 5G. And now when it comes to which one is better between the two, the photos are right here, so I'll let you decide that for yourself. But in general, I do think for what it is, being a mid-range phone that at this point, over a year after its release, is definitely quite a bit more affordable than it once was. I do think the photo quality is really good here. So in general, if you're looking for a phone that's on one hand decently affordable, but on the other hand still takes really nice photos, then you definitely won't go wrong with either phone here. And also keep in mind, when it comes to video, both phones can record 4K videos on both the front and rear cameras, so definitely great to see there, considering that at this point in 2023, for whatever reason, aside from some of the higher end Samsung Galaxy A series phones, not very many non-flagship phones can actually record 4K videos. I know the Moto G Stylus 5G 2023 can actually record in 4K, at least in the rear camera, but again, aside from phones like these, there really aren't that many others. So if you are recording a lot of videos and you want the option to record in a higher resolution, then either phone here will be a great choice. Now when it comes to the RAM and processor, with the A54 5G, we're getting 6GB of RAM with the Exynos 1380 processor. With the A73 5G, we're getting 8GB of RAM with the Qualcomm Snapdragon 778G 5G processor. Now when it comes to performance, compared to pretty much every other A series phone, the Samsung Galaxy A54 5G is considerably faster. With the exception of the A34 5G, I feel like this phone and that phone are essentially the same in pretty much every way. But with the A73 5G, I feel like this phone for what it is exceptionally fast. I don't quite know its purpose. I mean, I've done comparisons on this channel between this phone and the S21 FE, and performance-wise they are actually pretty close. So I'm guessing this phone is basically supposed to be like the S21 FE in places where they don't sell it. But either way, I will say between the two, despite the A54 5G being actually pretty fast for what it is, the A73 5G is the faster device here. Now, the difference is definitely not huge, so if you're an average user and you get the A54 5G, you're still probably not going to be disappointed. But at the same time, if you do want the faster phone between the two, the A73 5G will have a slight advantage. Now I ran a benchmark test on each phone using Geekbench 6, and here are the results I got. So again, as you can see here, although the difference is not like huge or anything, the A73 5G did come out on top. And when it comes to Samsung Galaxy A series phones, again, there really aren't that many phones at this point that can do this. So again, if you do want the faster phone between the two, you will want to go with the A73 5G. But honestly, if you're looking for a mid-range phone that has really good performance, either phone here will still be a great choice. Now for the batteries, these phones are actually pretty much exactly the same, both having 5000 mAh batteries, supporting 25 watt fast charging. So definitely great to see here. 25 watt fast charging, while not being as good as some of the OnePlus phones for example, is definitely still pretty good. So charging speed is not really going to be an issue here. And of course with 5000 mAh batteries, these are pretty much the largest batteries you can get. So if you are looking for something that has really good battery life, either phone here will be a great choice. For the software, both phones have Android 13, and considering Samsung has really good software support, with either phone, you can expect to get several other major updates in the future. With the A54 5G, this phone did come with Android 13, so it will be getting Android 14, 15, 16, and 17. And with the A73 5G, it originally came with Android 12 and upgraded to Android 13 when it came out. So this phone should be getting Android 14, 15, and 16. So if you want that extra update, if you want to keep your phone for pretty much as long as possible while still getting the latest version of Android, then in that case, the A54 5G will have an advantage. But if you're really only going to keep your phone for a couple years, the A73 5G will be perfectly fine too. When it comes to other features, both phones have NFC, so if you like to use tap and pay, you won't have to worry about that here. You can use that feature with either phone, no problem. But unfortunately, neither phone has a headphone jack, so if you have a normal pair of 3.5mm headphones you want to use, you will need an adapter. But in conclusion, which of these phones is better? Now in general, there are a couple different ways to look at this. If we're just comparing specs, then despite the phones being really similar, in pretty much every way where there's a difference, the Samsung Galaxy A73 5G is the better device here. It has a slightly larger display, the camera is honestly kind of debatable. I wouldn't really make a decision based on that because I feel like they're pretty much at the same level, but performance wise, the A73 5G is a bit faster, but in pretty much every other way, aside from the A54 5G being a year newer, and therefore having an extra update, I would consider these phones pretty much equal. So if they're going for the same price, I would personally go with the A73 5G, unless again you want to keep your phone for a year longer, in which case the extra update will make a difference. But another thing to keep in mind is that depending on where you're located, the prices are going to be quite a bit different. For example, if you're in the US, I would definitely go with the A54 5G because although the A73 5G at this point is still going to be a bit more affordable than it once was, keep in mind this phone is not officially launched in the US, and as a result, no US carrier is going to have it, so you will have to get it factory unlocked for whatever price they're going for now. Whereas with the A54 5G, US carriers have lots of deals where you can get this phone for nearly free, and while the A73 5G is a little bit faster and has a slightly larger display, I feel like the price difference is definitely not worth it. So in that case, if you really want to maximize the value you're getting for the money, again, I would definitely go with the A54 5G. That being said though, if you're outside the US, there are certain countries where the A54 5G is either not offered, or maybe the same price, or maybe even a bit more expensive. And of course, in that case, the A73 5G will be a better choice. But at the end of the day, despite their differences, if you're looking for an affordable 5G phone that has really good performance, a really nice display, plenty of storage, a great camera, a large battery, and really good software support, you're not going to go wrong with either phone here. But this concludes my comparison between the Samsung Galaxy A54 5G and the Samsung Galaxy A73 5G. Again, if you want to learn more about either phone individually, definitely check out the description, where I am linking to several other videos about them, as well as some information about pricing, availability, and some of my favorite smartphone accessories. But that's it for this video. If you enjoyed it and found it useful, be sure to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to follow Kalipa's Tech on Twitter and Instagram. And as always, I will see you in the next video.